Hey guys, how are you? Let's see, sound check number 2. Can you guys hear me? Great, visual. Awesome, good. All right, so I guess there's a lot of traffic. There's a few people that are late. In the regular class, there's always somebody that's late. In a virtual class, how can you be late? Just saying. All right, guys. So here's the thing. On the chat, I posted the link again. Make sure those of you that haven't been able to get like you cannot get the logins. Okay. Hold on. Share it again. Okay, so if you cannot get the logins from the website, which is being updated, I'm going to show you right now updates that happened last night, and there's a few more today. In the WhatsApp group, or even in the Facebook group, what I do is I always update with today's chapter. So whatever we're going to cover, I'll put the link there always with that info. Hey Zanite, how are you? Good morning. So YouTubers, if you're there, good morning. All right, but make sure as a student of New Direction School, we do have this group for the students. So make sure you go there, okay, for the daily updates. Very, very important. Okay. Now let me show you what I'm doing. Let's see what we got. We got, all right, Nina, Celine, Alondra, Brittany, Romello, Fallon. Amy, can you change your name? It shows Turkey Cheek. I don't know if that's your legal name, but change it. Chidera, I see you. Or Chidera, you want me to call it Chidera or Felix? Which one? Number 1, number 2. Felix, Chidera, I don't know. You got to tell me how it goes. Number 2, Felix. All right, easier. Okay, so I got Felix. I got Reza. I have Daniil. Spacely is here. Forgot the space today. Nidia, can you hear me? You look like you're having trouble there. Nidia. Can't hear me? You cannot hear me? Okay, well, she's going to have to... Don't argue with it. All right, we got Jacqueline right there. Elda, where's your camera? And Vanessa. All right, guys, I want to show you real quick what we got. So, student portal. I did update already. So, you have chapter 1. You have chapter 2 and 3. So, you can go here to the chapters. This is the class replay. And chapter pages are right here. So, so this is up to chapter 3. I'm updating the rest of them today and tomorrow. But the chapter pages are right here. Key terms and review quizzes are being added here as well. And PowerPoints will be added later on. Right now it's not working, PowerPoints. That's why it bounces you back. Now I understand what Zelina was saying yesterday. So if you click here, it's going to bounce you back to this page. That's what it is. But these are being added. The first 3 chapters are already there. And this is going to be updated as well. So for now, the chapters that we've been covering, they're being updated daily here, okay? So if you want to go to the replay, something you did not understand, you want to go over again, that's what it is. You go to Mini Me over here and listen to me all over again. The jokes are the same, so be ready to skip the jokes. You can just move forward. It's the good thing. Like here, you can mute me if you want when I start the jokes. Here, you can just speed up and go to the next portion. All right, but everything should be right there. And Daniil says, I'll take Benjamin. You want me to call you Benjamin? Okay, cool. So, got Felix, got Benjamin. Okay. It's just that it shows as your last name. So it's when I'm going scanning right through, I feel like it's the last name. That's why. Guys, if you have any questions, drop them now in the chat before we move forward. Sound. All right. All right, Olga just joined us. Cool. If you are in YouTube, you have questions you want to address before we move forward, also you can ask questions. Take advantage. Zanite, congratulations on your result on the exam. I checked it out, the practice exam. So congratulations on that. Very good. All right. Nina has a question. Why don't airlines or airports have to pay to use our airspace? Very good question. So the best way that I can explain this is you have a municipality, right? And the municipality charges you taxes and has certain controls over. So it's like the government has certain controls over your property. So as we went over, or we'll go over in a different chapter, they have certain controls. So what they've done is restrict all the airspace above 400 feet. So if there's an airplane within 400 feet of your property, now it's invading your airspace. So what they said is you do own up to infinity and beyond, subject to certain limitations imposed by the government. So again, up to 400 feet, you can do whatever you want with your property. You can have drones. You can build up if the municipality, your property is zoned in the municipality up to that. But other than that, it's the government that controls that. Okay, so it's pretty much like asking me, how can we get to the moon and shoot something to the moon, right? If I own all the way up to infinity and the moon happens to be right on top of my house, then I own a part of the moon, and anything that passes in between, they should pay me for that. They should pay a toll. So I agree 100% with that. They should pay the toll, right? But again, government limits you on your rights. You do have full rights. You can do whatever you want, but government kind of limits you on certain things for the well-being or welfare of the community, right? I know it's probably not the answer you're looking for, but that's pretty much what it is. All right, let's see. No other questions? Nidia, can you hear me now? Oh, you're good? All right, cool. I had sent you a message on Messenger, but if you got it, you got it. Cool. Is there anybody that hasn't accessed Quizlet yet? Raise your hand if you still have not accessed Quizlet. Quizlet, very important. Okay. Alondra, Amy, Nina. Make sure you guys do. It's on the student portal. All right, let me show you again. It's very helpful at the end of each chapter to go over these so you relate the key terms. You go here to where it says access course resources. And then there's a link right here to Quizlet. Once you click on that, it's going to take you right into real estate salesperson licensing. It has math, terms, acronyms, and it has New Jersey portion, which we haven't gotten to yet. And we have the nationwide portion, which is what we're addressing now. And here you go. Today we're going to talk about ownership or real estate. There's property management, there are listing agreements, the stuff we already talked about, We talked about rights in real estate and a few other things right here. So they're all here. All the chapters are here except the very first one, which is the business, real estate business, which was just an intro. But all of them are here. The advantage of going over this is, again, this gives you like a flashcard, right, for you to learn. In this case, there's 22 for this chapter. All right, so make sure you guys join the Quizlet. I'm gonna share here in the chat right now. Okay. So you got a phone? Okay, great. All right, I was gonna show you. All right, so very important. Just take advantage of it. It's tools that I created for you guys, so might as well use them. Riza, why is it sending you to the wrong one? It's weird because it should send you to two people just joined. Okay. Cool. Guys, so take advantage of that because it is a very good resource, especially at the end of each chapter. It's a lot of information. The Quizlet will help you keep it fresh. So it's not a testing site, not for you to, like, it doesn't have multiple choice, even though they just implemented a beta version of it. I'm still not using the beta version of it, so you go there, it's like flashcards only. They do have games over the flashcards. They have matching. They have gravity, like for you to click on it as fast as you can, and to again, it's a match game. But take advantage of it because, again, it's a recap. There's too much information that I give you guys on a daily basis. If you don't go back and test yourselves, you know, it's going to be very tough at the end. All right, so at least go through the terms. All right, so with that being said, let's move forward. We got 17 people here. Sorry, 18 people. So we are good to go. Ownership. I told you guys, I asked you guys to be full of energy because today we're going to have a tough chapter. It's actually easy, but it could be tough in the same token. So let's pay close attention to this. Okay. There's different ways you can own property, but if you guys remember, there's a word that we talked about yesterday that I told you usually we're used to calling it renters, and that word is tenants or tenancy, right? So I did tell you that there's freehold and leasehold estates, correct? We talked about freehold and leasehold? Great. Under freehold estate, you are the owner, right? So you are a freehold tenant. You have possession and occupancy of the property, and you can do whatever you want. You have those rights. If it's a leasehold, you are a renter, a lessee, right? So you have a leasehold tenancy. So again, it's still called tenancy because of the occupancy and possession of the property. All right, so just want to flip that switch where you think tenants are renters. Tenants are occupants that have possession and use of the property, okay? So a sole owner is a tenant or has a tenancy in severalty. And here comes the other word that's weird when we talk about sole ownership. If it's just one, how could it be several, right? What it says when we put this right here at the end, severalty, it means severed or cut from everybody else. Okay, so it's just me, cut from everybody else. So it's just one owner. Okay, one owner. So right here, if a single party owns a fee or life estate, the ownership is a tenancy in severalty. Synonyms are sole ownership, ownership in severalty, and estate in severalty. And when the would-be sole owner is a husband and wife, state laws may require a homestead, dower, or elective share rights to be released and allow ownership free and clear of any marriage-related claims. The estate of a deceased tenant in severalty passes to heirs. So if you are the sole owner of the property, you can pass it along to your heirs. And the reason why I'm saying this is because later on we're going to learn about one that doesn't go to the heirs, it goes to the survivors of the group. So let's go right here. And I'm going to put this as being 100% ownership. Okay, so this circle represents 100% ownership. If there's just one owner, one person there, A, this is considered tenancy in severalty. So one owner, tenancy in severalty. Okay? If the owner dies, the shares go to heirs. Okay, so automatically, either by will, if it was appointed by will, so devisees, or automatically by laws of descent and distribution, which is whatever the state law is, automatically goes to heirs when the owner dies. Okay? So that's the easiest one. Tenancy in severalty, one person, I can pass it along to my heirs, I can sell while I'm alive, I can do whatever I want. Okay? Then there's forms of co-ownership. Well, co-ownership is when there's two or more people. Okay? Every time there's two or more people, there's different types of co-ownership. In the tenancy in common, or TICs, get used to this because I call them TICs. Right? In the tenancy in common, there's two or more people not married to each other. Not married. Okay? In a JT, it's also, so joint tenancy, it's also two or more people. This, let me put here, two or more. Not married. Tenancy by the entirety, this is married. So husband and wife, or spouse and spouse. Okay? And then these we'll talk about later. So what we're going to address right now is the difference between these. If it's one person is in severalty, two or more could be in common, joint tenancy, or by the entirety. Okay? What you need to remember is every time you see by the entirety is husband and wife because they are married. So this is solely for husband and wife. These two right here is two or more people not married, but they have distinguishing characteristics, which I'll address in a second. Good? Move forward. All right. Okay. So one thing to remember is that if more than one person or legal entity, because a corporation could own property with another corporation, right? A corporation could own property with an individual. There could be a mix of these situations. What you need to remember is if it's two or more persons or entities, that's what's called a co-ownership. Therefore, they're co-tenants as well. Again, the word tenant when we talk about ownership. So the first one we have is TIC, tenants in common. Why in common? Because we hold assets in common. Let's say there's three of us and we own the property, right? Let me go here. Let's erase this. In common, I have A, B, and C. There's three people. Let's look at the distinguishing characteristics of tenancy in common. We own the property. Let's say it's a it's a two-family, right? And we have undivided possession of the property. Like there's no way to split. Okay, there's three of us, so you get the basement, you get the first floor, and you get the second floor. We don't do this, right? It's impossible, legally impossible. Whatever you guys do as far as where you sleep or don't sleep, that's totally up to you. But legally, it's impossible for three people to divide this property. So we own undivided interest. All right? So right here, ticks. The tenancy in common is also known as estate in common, and this is the most common form of ownership because it's automatic. When the owners are not married, automatically we become tenants in common. The defining characteristics is that we have, again, two or more owners, right? And let me state this again. Not married. I already addressed that before, but let me state again. We have identical rights. Like I said, it's a two-family. There's three of us. We have the same rights to the property. The interests are individually owned. This is where it's going to make a difference between this type of ownership and the one we're going to talk later. The interests are individually owned. What does that mean? That's it. Individually owned. I have 50%, and there's like 25%, and then, I'm sorry, there's 20%, and then 30% right there. So unequal shares, interests are individually owned. Even though we don't split the two family, we can have unequal shares. That's a key characteristic. So electable ownership shares. There's no survivorship. If you guys remember, we talked briefly about dowry and courtesy. If you guys remember, when husband dies, the 50% shares goes to the wife. If the wife dies, 50% shares goes to the husband, right? Because there's the right of survivorship. In the tenancy in common, that doesn't happen. So in the tenancy in common, if C dies, the shares go to heirs. Doesn't come to A or B. See, in a husband and wife scenario, one of the parties dies, the other one just acquires the whole thing. Are you guys understanding this? Okay, cool. So in this scenario, in tenants in common, somebody dies, the shares go to the heirs. The other parties don't receive anything. It goes to the heirs. All right? And there's no unity of time. What does this mean? Compared to the next one we're going to talk about, or in contrast with the next one we're going to talk about, in a tenancy in common, could A buy shares into the property later on? Let's say B and C are the ones that bought the property, and then 2 months later we say, hey, let's add another person because we need to do this or we need to do that, whatever. So it's favorable if we have somebody else. Can we add A later on? Sure. There's no unity of time, meaning we don't have to be owners at the time of purchase. We can add people later on, okay? Or we can remove people later on. So there's no unity of time, okay? We just talked about this, the identical rights, interest individually owned, electable shares. We just talked about this as well. Okay. One thing that's important, in absence of stated ownership shares, it is assumed that each has a share equal to that of the others. So if we did not define, guys, if we did not define right here, let's say we had A put $10,000, I put $20,000, and C put $15,000. All right, so that's the money that we put into the property. Now, if you're going to think about the amount of money that was put in, the shares are according to the money that was put in, right? But if we don't state in the deed, right, when it says that it's A, B, and C as owners in common to this property, if we don't state that I have 50%, you have 20%, and then you have here 30%. If we don't state in the deed, then automatically everything is equal shares. Okay? This happens right here if you do not state what percentage of ownership you have. So if you don't define it, because the deed is like a contract, right? So the deed explains the ownership agreement that we all have. If it's not stated, then automatically, even though I put more money and you put less money, automatically we have equal shares. In fact, I could have just put $1. If we don't say anything, my $1, right? My $1 gives me rights to equal shares because we did not state how we were separating the ownership, right? So that's key. It's not about the money you put into the property that defines your ownership percentage. It's about putting it on paper. You own X percentage. I own Y percentage. He or she owns W percentage. You guys understand? So you have to state it. Very, very important. If you don't, automatically equal shares. No survivorship. We already talked about that. So if one person dies, it doesn't go to the survivors of the group. It goes to somebody else. This we already talked about as well. The unity of time. And here we go. Initial interests after conveyance. So we added C sold shares to D and E. Right? So it's a quick illustration. And we're going to go to JT, joint tenancy. Guys, if you have any questions before I move forward, because this will get confusing, so let's make sure we clear as many questions as I can right now. Okay? Okay. Now we're going to talk about joint tenancy. We still have A, B, and C, right? Same people. But there's a difference. In a TIC, or tenancy in common, right, there was a division here of the shares, right? We still hold undivided possession of the property and rights to the property, but our shares were divided. In the joint tenancy, there's no division of shares. A, B, and C own equally, no matter what. Okay? Guys, whoever doesn't have the camera on, make sure turn it on, please. Sorry, I'm just trying to see something quick. Lee, your name changed. Can you correct your name on Zoom, because once we do the attendance, I want to make sure I have your name there. Very important. Okay, Elda, I don't see your camera. Okay. So JT, in a joint tenancy, two or more persons collectively own a property as if they were a single person. Rights and interests are indivisible and equal. So in a tenancy in common, you can have unequal shares, as I was saying, but in a JT, they have to be indivisible and equal. That means we are equal in every single way when it comes to a joint tenancy. We are equal in every single way. Each has a shared interest in the whole property, which cannot be divided up. These are key things to pay attention to, because in the joint tenancy, you can't divide anything other than equal, right? And in a tick, you can sell your shares, part of the shares, and no problem. Here, every time you sell your shares, it affects the ownership, okay? The way it's owned, the title to it, okay? So, joint tenants may only convey their interest to outside parties as tenants in common. I cannot convey the joint tenant interest. What is the joint tenant interest? Let's go over this first. The characteristics and requirements for joint tenancy. We have to have unity of ownership. We have to have equal ownership. Very important. Okay? There's no transfer of interest, and there's the right of survivorship. Okay? There's no transfer of interest to outsiders. There's a transfer of interest to the insiders through survivorship. Okay? So, unity of ownership. Whereas tenants in common hold separate title to their individual interests, joint tenants hold it together as a single title to the property. Single title. So one deed for the whole property, like in a tenancy in common, but without separation of shares. Okay? So it's not like I have 1/3, you have 1/3, he has 1/3, because technically, if there's 3 of us, then it's a third each, correct? Right? But that is not defined in the deed. In the deed, we all own it as a whole. So there's no division of shares. Equal ownership. Again, without exception. There's 4 co-tenants, each own 25% of the property, but without division. So as a whole, 25% is what we assume based on being 4 people there. Transfer of interest. A joint tenant may transfer his or her interest to an outside party, but only as a tenancy in common interest. You cannot transfer the joint tenancy interest. So whoever acquires the interest co-owns the property as a tick with the other joint tenants. I'll explain better in a second. The remaining joint tenants continue to own an undivided interest in the property, less the new co-tenant's share. So what we said here was, if C, guys, that's why I need your attention here, and try not to sleep, those of you laying down. If C sells his or her shares to D, D does not acquire the same rights that C had. So automatically, there's a division here of that 1/3 that was sold. What just happened? What happened was A and B still own as JT, so they're still joint tenants because they're the originals, right? And D is now considered a tick, is a tenant in common with A and B. Okay, so D becomes a tenant in common with A and B. Okay? You guys got it? Probably not. I'll just, don't stress. I'm going to explain this all over again. The reason being is because the main feature of the joint tenancy is the right of survivorship. This is the main feature. What does that mean? It means that once one of the people here dies, the shares are automatically absorbed by the others, like a husband and wife scenario. So let me go back a little bit. And let's assume that C died. Okay? C died. In a tick, the shares go to the heirs. In a JT or joint tenancy, it's just one less person in the group. All right? I know I'm being cold, but it's just to explain the process. But one person dies is one less person in the group. There was 3, now there's 2. There was 1/3 of shares, now there's half of the shares being divided. You guys understand? And once A dies, is just one less person in the group. That's the thing about joint tenancies. There's the right of survivorship. Survivorship. Now, let me ask you something. If you guys were not reading what was here, so you're not reading this, it's 100% ownership and there's just one person. What is this called? Let me know in the chat. What is this called? If there's only one owner, what is it called? Well, it is sole ownership. Lena, all right, thank you. Here you go. Severalty. All right, severalty. Romello, I don't think it's sorry. That's not the type of ownership we get. I'm not sure what happened there. Let's see, did he write something? Oh, because he sent it privately? Okay, got it. But yes, it's not, yes, it's sole ownership, correct, but what is it called? It's a tenancy in severalty. Or sorry, tenancy in severalty, right here. Very good. It's a tenancy in severalty. What am I trying to say here? Very simple. There were 3 people, right? Hold on. There were 3 people. We had A, B, and C. We purchased the property together through the same deed at the same time, holding equal undivided possession and interest, right? There's no division here. We own it as a whole. So just like a husband and wife, they own it as a whole. That means when one person dies, it's just one less person in the group. Again, right? And another person dies, is one less person in the group. Only the last one, only the survivor, so me, in case you guys did not see right there, Bruno B, okay? So me, I get everything after I kill all of you. That's what just happened. So when I die, if I ever die, Lydia, don't laugh, this is serious. If I ever die, my shares go to heirs. So the scenario we had, if you guys noticed, let me go back. These people did not stand a chance. Their heirs did not get anything. Who got their shares? Well, I did, right? And then my heirs. I'm the only one, because now it's a tenancy in severalty, I'm the only one that can pass along to the heirs. Okay? Any questions here? Right of survivorship means one less person in the group. And then the survivor, all right, the survivor is the only one that has the right, because of tenancy and severalty, right? He or she is the only one that has the right to pass it along to heirs. All right, and this is very important. You know why? Because let's assume, like obviously if people did everything right in life, each one of these people, these 3 people here, they have a will. The problem is the will has no effect unless you're the survivor of the group. So there might be a question in the school or state exam that says John and Adam acquire property as joint tenants. So it already tells you it's a joint tenant. So automatically you got to think right of survivorship. All right? So John and Adam purchased property as joint tenants. John willed his share to his daughter Sharon. Okay? Upon John's death, and by the way, this is the way the questions are formulated. Upon John's death, who owns John's shares? All right, so what happened here is they threw you off. They give you more information than needed. Why? Because if it's a joint tenancy, Sharon gets nothing. the will is not valid. I can put whatever I want in the will, but if I decided to own it as joint tenancy, then the survivors of the group get my shares regardless of what's written in the will. All right, so take note of that. So regardless of what's written in the will, the survivors of the group get the shares. Okay? So the answer for a state exam or school exam would be Adam will get the shares. Only Adam. One of the answers there is Adam and Sharon. The other one is neither. The other one is just Sharon. Something like that. Great question, Nina. Great question. What happens if everyone dies at the same time? So technically, nobody dies at the same time. Okay? It could be medically possible, but once they're assessing your time of death, they will always give like 1 minute after the other. So make sure, if this does happen to you, where you're in a scenario, I hope not. I hope you're never in a scenario. Knock on wood, knock on everything. I hope you're never in a scenario like this, Nina. But if you're ever in a scenario like this, start punching the other people. Let them die first, because then you get to will it to your kids. That's how it is. All right. Make sure they don't survive. You survive. It's the survival of the fittest. That's a law of the jungle. You guys know this, right? If you want it. I'm joking. Some of you are very serious right now. It's a joke. It's a joke. Don't do this. All right. Let nature take its course. Right. Don't do this. There's other agreements we can get into. But I also teach insurance, and unfortunately, when we teach insurance, that's what we talk about. There's the medical determination of the time of death. Even if everybody, like let's say it's a plane crash or something, when they get there, is they got to this one person, and time of death they call it at 12:01. They get to the next person 12:02, next person 12:03. So it's not like they get there, hey, everybody died at the same time. No, it's after they check the party and determine their death, they clock it as that time of death. Okay? So whoever was the last one to survive from, let's say, the plane crash, that's the one that would ultimately have the rights to transfer to the heirs, right? That's why I always carry my parachute, just in case. Anyway, moving forward. Right here, survivorship feature. Like I said, this is automatic. We don't have to go through probate. What does that mean? It doesn't have to go through court to determine who owns what. This is automatic. Okay? In a tenancy in common, in a TIC, you got to probate first. So figure out if there's monies that are owed to anybody, right? And will be addressed in court. It needs to be paid first, then distributed. Here, the right of survivorship supersedes that. No court until the last one, the final one. All right? We are on page 43 for me. I think on your book will be probably 41 or 42. You have the book. Okay. So there's 4 unities that must be present. 4 unities that must be present when creating a joint tenancy. I already addressed them before, but we're going to go over this again because you have to remember. It's the unity of time, title, interest, and possession. What does this mean? For a joint tenancy to exist, for a JT to exist, unity of time, all parties must acquire the joint interest at the same time. So if A, B, and C want to own it as joint tenants, we must have been present at the same closing, right? And we're acquiring through the same deed, meaning our 3 names are on the deed at the time of conveyance, okay? Unity of interest. Again, we have equal, undivided interests. Very important. Equal, undivided interests. And unity of possession, we receive the same rights of possession. Why is this distinction so important between a JT and a TIC? In the state exam, if there's a question, so I already gave you one as an example. I'm going to give you another. If there's a question that says John owns 1/3, Adam owns 2/3, okay? The moment you see unequal shares, there's two or more people, and you see unequal shares, automatically it's a tick. Why? Because for a JT to exist, they must have equal shares. All right, so automatically tick. Now, what if the question says they own 50-50? Does that mean that it's automatically a JT? No, because as a tick, I can have 50% and you can have 50%. So now we need to read a little bit more. Read into it. Does it talk about right of survivorship? Does it talk about all 4 unities have been met? This is how they throw little hints at you. So all 4 unities have been met. They have equal shares and this and that. This is an example of, boom, a joint tenancy. Once it talks about the 4 unities have been met, it's a JT. You guys got it? All right, just want to make sure you guys are clear with this before I move forward. Any questions? Cool. Termination by partition suits. What is a partition? What is a partition? Partition is a separation, okay? So we're splitting. That's what it is. It was all fine and dandy when we purchased the property, like we're best friends and all, right? But then later on, you know how to manage your money. I don't know how to manage my money. I like to spend a lot of money, right? And then, this is not true. It's just for the example, okay? And then, because I don't know how to manage my money, and this happens all the time in businesses, it happens in relationships. Because I don't know how to manage my money, I'm going to come to you and say, hey, guys, yeah, so we need to sell that building. I need money. I need to pay off my debts, my gambling problem, whatever. We need to sell the building. If you guys don't agree to the sale of the building, I can force you to sell the building. And that is called a lawsuit. That's called a lawsuit to partition or partition suit. Now, if the property could be physically divided, meaning like a duplex. A duplex is a side-by-side. So I can have the house on the left, you can have the house on the right. It's a 2-family and now becomes a 1-family by conversion, right? So 1 family to one and 1 family to the other. Then what do we do? It's called a physical partition. If it could physically be separated, is a physical partition. If it's impossible, because the example I gave you guys here, it's a 2-family that's owned by 3 people, it's impossible for us to physically divide. Like I said, you're going to get what? 2nd floor, 1st floor, and basement? Is that how we're going to split? That's not fair, right? So if that's not possible, then the court is going to order the property to be sold. And this is now called, if it's court, it's called a judicial partition. Okay? Judicial partition. So if it's by court order, judicial. If it's physical, because we were able to physically separate the property, let's say land, and we just cut land into 2 halves or whatever the shares are, then it's called a physical partition. Okay? So it could be physical or judicial. So here, partition. And again, the word partition means separation. We part ways. You go your way, I go my way, we split. Okay? Guys, if there's anybody on YouTube that has questions, please address it as well. Are we good? Great. Oh, Romella has a question. Can a partition suit to be used to kick a person out? That's to kick everybody out. The partition suit is separation. We're separating. So I'm forcing the sale. You either buy me out or are we selling to other people in order to get paid? Yep. So partition suit is splitting. Zanaid, can you explain one more time about terminating joint tenancy? Okay, so to terminate a joint tenancy, going here, how do you terminate a joint tenancy? Every time we alter the base structure, because remember, there's 4 unities. These 3 people acquired at the same time through the same title with undivided interest or possession, right? So every time we change the nature of the ownership by adding somebody, right, we create this separation. They came later. They're not part of the original, okay? So automatically, whoever was added becomes a tick with our JT. Okay, automatically. If C sells his or her interest to E, then it's another tick. And we start cutting pieces out. So that's how we end a joint tenancy. We don't end a joint tenancy on the whole thing. We end the joint tenancy on the cuts that we make along the way. If A dies, right, we have 2 people with tenants in common interest with us. But because A dies, the JT no longer exists. Remember, the originals were A, B, and C, right? So if A dies, the second person to the group, JT is over. So now, what do we have? We have a full tick. Tenants in common with divided shares. You got it, United? Let me know. Nina's asking, are ticks or JTs more common? Ticks are automatic, so they're the most common ones. JTs are, for me, it's like they're a business decision. Because look, you see how you guys are here in this class? That means you have an interest in real estate or entrepreneurship, let's say, right? I have an interest in real estate and entrepreneurship. So if I buy a property with you guys, I know that you will have the best interest of the deal. Even if not mine, it's the best interest in the deal. But I don't know your significant others. I don't know your kids. I don't know if when you die, the person that inherits the shares, right, will force me to sell the property or not. And this happens a lot. It happens a lot where kids, and we're talking about ticks, not JTs. But it happens a lot where kids inherit or spouses inherit and they're like, yeah, I don't know how to manage real estate. I don't care about this thing. Let's sell. Let me get the money. So now they sue you for partition. They are suing you for partition. The heirs or the spouses, the kids, the spouse, whoever it is, they're now suing you to sell the property. Are you guys understanding this? So a JT is more like a business decision. Look, if you die, I get your shares. We'll put a separate agreement in place where I'll still take care of your family, like a percentage, almost like the disability that government gives you, like a percentage of it, and I'll keep on giving to your family, right? Not the full amount because you're no longer here. So I need you to help me, and if I'm doing all myself, I'll give a lesser share to your heirs. That could be a separate agreement. But guys, tenancy and severalty, tenancy in common, joint tenancy or tenancy by the entirety, we're talking about title to the property. Who owns the property? So when you die, automatically I acquire the property by myself because it's one less person in the group. You understand that, Nina? Good. So ticks are the most common because it's automatic. It's not a, hey, let me think about this type of thing. No, it's automatic. And then the JTs are more business decision versus emotional decision. It's like, I know that for me to continue supporting your family after you're gone, I know I cannot have your family run the business. Most likely they don't know how or they don't want to. And I don't want to get to a point where they force me to sell what me and you worked so hard to build. Does that make sense? All right, cool. So the next one we have is tenancy by the entireties. This is husband and wife or spouse and spouse. The reason why I'm putting husband and wife is because originally that's what it was. But now we know that most states, I think all of the states already by now, allow same-sex marriage, and they've altered their laws. Instead of saying husband and wife, they say spouse and spouse. So the rights are equal. If you are married, then this is the one. You become tenants or occupants and possession by the entirety as a whole, right? So the marriage is one. Okay? What are the features of the tenancy by the entirety? The same as this one. Husband and wife. Okay? Or spouse and spouse. So this is tenancy by the entirety. Okay? So husband and wife, tenancy by the entirety. All right? So it's very similar to the joint tenancy, like Zelene just wrote in the Zoom chat. Very similar. Because again, if the wife dies, husband gets everything, gets their 50% shares, right? So they have the right of survivorship, they hold equal and divided interest, everything is the same. No foreclosure for individual debts because we own as a whole. So if one dies, the survivor still holds the property, okay? And may be terminated by divorce, death, mutual agreement, and judgments for joint debt. But do you see partition anywhere? Doesn't say partition. So, no partition rights. Because the only lawsuit that can happen between a husband and wife is the divorce, right? So there's no partition rights. No partition rights, okay? So you cannot sue me, let's say we're married, you cannot sue me, say, Bruno, I'm suing you for half of this property, or we got to sell this property, whatever. No, you cannot pick and choose which property you're suing me on. We either divorce and divide the whole thing, right? Or we stay married, one or the other. You cannot pick and choose. Right? So, right here, the only thing we can do as husband and wife is divorce. Now, when there's a divorce, guys, there's a divorce. We already know that husband and wife, if wife died, husband gets it. If husband dies, wife gets it. Now there's a divorce. If the husband dies, what happens to the shares? Let me know in the chat. If the husband dies, what happens to the shares? Let me know in the chat. Lillian is asking wife. Carmela says heirs. Felix says heirs. Colin says goes to the wife. Benjamin says goes to the wife. Can I repeat the question? $5 for that, plus tax. What I asked was if we're divorced. If the husband dies, what happens to the shares? Okay, Amy says wife. Olga says heirs. Lee says heirs. Anybody else? Got 19 people here. Come on. Help me out. Vanessa says it goes to the wife unless our kid's out of the marriage. Okay. Nina says heirs. Denied says passes to the wife. We're like 50-50 here. Some say go to the heirs, the other ones say go to the wife. Here's the thing, guys. Did it not say there was a divorce? Oh, it's the ex-wife. What do you mean goes to the wife? There's no life interest anymore. So the shares go to heirs. Elda says go to the children. There you go. Elda, I need your camera on, please. Thank you. Glad you're participating. I need your camera on. And Vanessa says, I was killing the man. It's okay. You can kill the man. I mean, I got nothing to do with that. Your husband seems to be a really nice guy, so like, at least I know when I call when something happens, I know who to call, right? Anyway, these are the little things, guys, the little details that if you don't pay attention to, you will fail. You got guys, you were right. You were right. You were right if I didn't say divorce. If I didn't make this separation here, if I didn't cut it. Because when there's a divorce, they become ticks, tenants in common. There's a separation of the assets, of the shares, right? These are the little details that if you don't pay attention to, right? So you guys know the information. I'm going to prove this over and over and over until the end. That you guys know the information. You're grasping the stuff, but it's the little details. How do you fail an exam? You speed read or speed answer the question. Okay? So very, very important. There was a divorce. We're no longer married. If we're not married, I don't have a life interest in you or you in me. Okay? So we're exes. Being exes, anything we own goes to our heirs individually. So to address what Vanessa said, it goes to the heirs unless to the wife unless you have kids outside of the marriage. It goes to my heirs, whether outside of the marriage or not. My shares go to my heirs. She's the ex-wife in this scenario. Okay? All right, guys, good? Any questions? If you guys don't notice, I'm going to trick you as many times as I can. So I need to get you ready for the exam. This is like being in a boxing ring, and I'm going to throw some jabs, some uppercuts. You know, got to get you ready to dodge those hits that the exam is going to give you. What it is. All right. Gonna move forward. Estates in trust. There's something called a living trust and land trusts. Now, many states don't address this like this, but in general, that's what it's called. Estate in trust, or the grantor or trustor transfers legal title to a fiduciary, the trustee, so that's a third party. And it's very common in Wyoming, for instance. If you want to own property, you open up a Wyoming trust, and there's a trustee. So who is the trustee? I'm the beneficiary of the trust, as an example. And let's say, Alondra, you are the trustee. That means you managing my interests. If we get sued, they're going to talk to you. It's not you getting sued, but they're going to talk to you, not to me. I'm the beneficiary. Nobody knows who I am because I entrusted everything in you. That's the only person they see, right? It could be an attorney, it could be a friend, whatever, right? So that's a trust. Very similar to a corporation in terms of hiding who the actual owner is or beneficiary is, right? So it's very similar. It's just different financial structures, let's call it like that, okay, or entities. So The trust may be created by deed, will, or trust agreement. And the trustee, so in my scenario, the trustee was Alondra, I gave it to her, has the fiduciary duties to the trustor and the beneficiary to maintain condition and value of the property. Okay? So there's a trustor, the one that creates the agreement, right? And there's a trustee, the person that I appointed, that owes duties to whoever created the agreement. And then there's the beneficiary of all this, okay? You can also think about it like a life insurance. Life insurance, right? Or a regular insurance. The life insurance, as an example, is the company operates as your trustee. Like you're giving them money every month, and upon your death, the company is going to disperse money to who? To the beneficiary, which could be your heirs. So it operates very similar to that, okay? It's not your money, trustor. It's not your money. It's the beneficiary's money. So when you have a life insurance, that money does not belong to whoever created the life insurance. It belongs to the beneficiary. Can you borrow against it? Can you take money out? Possibly, depending on the structure. Are you guys understanding this? So the trustor can do whatever he or she wants with the property, but who benefits from the property is the beneficiary, whoever you appointed to receive the property. Okay? Living trust. Okay? The living trust is while I'm alive, you can do this or that on my behalf as long as it's to my best interest. So living trusts are mainly established, especially when somebody knows that they have medical conditions or if something might happen medically or physically, where you cannot perform your duties. So somebody else, while you're alive, somebody else handles your affairs for you. So if I am the one who holds the trust, I'm the trustee in your living trust, and for some reason, knock on wood, on everything you can knock, right? You get into a coma, I'm not going to go there and say, hey, blink twice if I can sell your house, or shake your hand, or lift a finger if I can do this or if I can do that. I'm not going to, right? Because you're in a status that it's difficult for you to react. And I cannot wait for your response because the bills are accumulating, let's say. So I need to sell your house in order to keep up with the medical bills. I have full powers to do so through the living trust. You gave me that power, similar to a power of attorney, if you want to think about it that way. It's similar, not quite. Similar to a power of attorney, but it allows me to make legal decisions on your behalf. Legally binding decisions on your behalf, okay? So, can you be the, great question, Nina. Can you be the beneficiary and the trustor? Okay. How about the beneficiary is an LLC that you own? That's the trick, if that's what you're trying to ask. Can you be the trustor and the beneficiary? No. Can the beneficiary be an LLC that you created to own the property? Or manage the property or receive the property? Sure. Or vice versa. Yep. That's why Wyoming is very well known for investors, because they use a blend of, or a mix of LLCs and trusts to create so many shields that it's almost impossible for you to sue somebody in those states. Wyoming, Nevada, Delaware, right? But Wyoming is very, very well known for trusts. Anyway. Only research this, if you're interested, only research this after we're done with this course. Don't start drifting, okay? You asked the question, I answered, but don't drift away, okay? Stay within the course right now. You guys can learn a lot of stuff right after this class. All right, cool. Testamentary trust, obviously, there's a will, so what it is. Land trusts, I already addressed it as well. And then we have ownership by business entities. Ownership by business entities. If you guys noticed, trusts are not here. Because a trust, as I was saying earlier, it's not a business entity. It is kind of like a financial shield, just like corporations are, right? But it's a different type of structure. All right, so ownership by entities. We have corporations, we have partnerships, and we have okay, hold on. We'll get there. I don't know what happened. Let's try this again. Vanessa 2.0, lol. Yep, there you go. So there's corporations and limited liability company. Yeah, done. All right, so limited liability companies. Now, the reason why I skipped partnership right now is to say this. Shield. Legal shield. A partnership is not a legal shield, but both a corporation and a limited liability company separate you, the individual, from the business. In this case, the business is owning a property. So it separates the property, the real property, from you. Meaning, if somebody slips and falls on your property, as an example, and you don't have enough insurance to cover whatever the damage was, that someone cannot sue you beyond the asset of the corporation or the limited liability structure. So if you have $1 million, $2 million, and the lawsuit was for $500,000, they can only sue the property. And what do you stand to lose? That particular property. So property A. Okay? In a partnership, there's no shield. At least not to the general partners. I'll explain better in a second. But there's no shield. What does that mean? It means that if you get sued against the property and there's not enough money on the sale of the property or insurance of the property, whatever, if there's not enough money, they can sue you beyond the property, beyond the investment. Meaning, you have $1 million house, they come after your $1 million house. You have your car, they come after your car. So in a partnership, they can come after everything you have, not just that particular property. And that's why, at least I do this, and there's a lot of people that do this as well. We have 123 Main Street LLC, and then right next door I own the same property, and it's 125 Main Street LLC. So the reason why we create an LLC for every single property, as an example, is that if I get sued on this one, it doesn't affect that one. You understand? But if they're all owned, as me as an individual or as a partnership, right? When they sue, who are they suing? The owner. Guess who's the owner here? Me. Right? They can go after my bank accounts, my tax refunds, they can levy wages, right? It's a general judgment. They come after everything we have. It's not against a particular property. They slipped and fall. They can go after way more. Are you guys understanding this? So the reason why we have a shield, a legal shield, corporation or limited liability company, see, not tongue twisted anymore. The reason why we have that is to create that separation of you, the individual. See, this is me, and I own these properties. But there's a shield. You sue this company, you don't take anything from this company, and you cannot come after me unless I committed fraud. If I committed fraud, then it doesn't matter what LLC or corporation you have, you pierce what is called in the financial world is called piercing the corporate veil. So that veil that you had, that shield, it was pierced, or there's a flaw to it because you, for instance, you were using the corporation to pay for personal stuff. Big mistake. If your corporation is acting as a private entity, right? So your own personal piggy bank, then it's not a corporation for IRS purposes. You understand? For legal purposes. You have to pay yourself out of the LLC and then you use the money. So the LLC cannot pay for my car insurance. The LLC cannot pay for my cell phone bill. The LLC Are you guys understanding this? The LLC cannot buy groceries for my house. The LLC cannot pay my rent. You can pay the business rent, but you cannot pay my rent. If I want to pay my individual stuff, I have to take the $5,000 as an example for personal. Okay, so that's just an example. You have to cash out in order to be able to pay these things. All right, and even for tax purposes later on, it's way better this way. I'm not getting into taxes right now. This is just giving you a heads up of what a corporation does or why you should have a corporation, or if it's real estate, just get an LLC. You don't need to go all complicated and get corporations. So a corporation is a legal entity owned by stockholders. An elected board of directors oversees the business, and officers and managers conduct day-to-day activities. Officers and directors may be held fully liable for the corporation's actions, while shareholders are only liable to the extent of the value of their shares. Corporations, like individuals, may own real estate in severalty or as tenants in common. In a partnership, big mistake, in a partnership, two or more persons agree to work together and share profits. A general partnership is not a distinct legal entity like a corporation, meaning there's no shield, right? There's not a separation. There's no separate tax ID that will say, hey, this is you and this is me, right? And all partners bear the full liability for debts. This is in the general partnership. They bear the full liability for debts and obligations. So guys, if we make $1 million, we share profits. It says right there on top. If we make $1 million, we share profits. If we get sued for $1 million, we share the liability. We share the debt and the obligation. What does this mean? If you don't have the money, and I do, I'm stuck. I have to pay. If I don't have the money, and you don't either, but you have assets, well, you sell your stuff to pay for our debt. That's what a general partnership is. It doesn't matter what you have or don't have. We are sharing this liability and this responsibility. Okay? If it's a limited partnership, as the name says, there's a limitation. So in a limited partnership, there's at least one general partner, and everybody else are limited. Others are limited. The general partners, they run the business and they're liable, just like here in the general partnership. They're liable for debts and obligations even beyond the partnership. The limited partners are liable only to the extent of their investment in the partnership. So let's say I'm the general partner and you guys, there's 20 of you here. If you guys contributed $10,000 each towards this partnership. If you are limited, because I'm the general partner, I'll run the show, you just contributed money, right? If you are limited, if we get sued for $1 million, I bear the responsibility for the $1 million. You guys stand to lose the $10,000 you put in, but nothing more. They can't go after you for more than that. You guys got it? That's the extent of your liability when it comes to limited liability partners or silent partners. These are also called silent partners. Limited or silent partners. Okay. Now, limited liability company, LLC. LLC. An LLC combines the features of the corporation and the limited partnership. So it's like a hybrid between both of them. An LLC offers its members limited liability, like a corporation, but income is passed directly to members and is taxed as an individual income. See, in a corporation, you're double taxed. You're taxed as a corporation and then taxed as an individual stockholder. In an LLC, whatever the LLC does at the end of the year, we do the pluses and minuses, and whatever it is, we split or share as profits in our K1, and the K1 comes to our individual taxes. So you get taxed once. Okay? The management structure is flexible. That's why I always recommend to have an LLC if you're small, right? And only have a corporation when you have like a big business. Because the things that are required of a corporation to maintain every quarter, for instance, it doesn't make sense when it's for the ownership of a real estate. Okay? Like a corporation or a partnership, an LLC may own real estate. Any questions? Let me know if there's any questions before I move forward. All right, so if no questions, we're going to move forward. We have other forms of ownership is condominiums. Okay, so condominiums and co-ops, and we're going to talk about both of them in a little bit. But condominiums, actually, you know what? Let's go to this first. We'll address them both right now. And I'm going to share with you guys, as you write this down, I'm going to share with you guys a sheet that has this as well, something similar to this. And Nina, yes, I do. I have a holdings company, and then the LLCs are owned or managed by the holdings company. Holdings company being an S corp. All right, so I just shared with everybody 2 files. Okay, it's in the Zoom right now. 2 files were shared. One is about the different ownerships and tenancies, which we just talked about earlier. And now for condo versus co-op. Condo versus co-op. And here are the differences between a condo and co-op. A condo means ownership. A co-op means you're a tenant shareholder. That means you're a tenant with benefits. Don't worry, you don't have to give me that look. I will translate whatever's written here. Okay, we'll get there. So, as I was saying, condo means ownership, co-op is a lease. So let's start with condo. In a condo, you receive a deed. Deed means title. Title means ownership, okay? You have individual taxes. So your unit has an individual tax, mortgage, insurance, and it's its own financial entity. What does this mean? It means that, zoom out, okay, right there. It means that if you don't pay your taxes, you can lose your property. If you don't pay your mortgage, you can lose your property. If you don't pay insurance, you're responsible for the damages to the property. And you are your own financial entity. So whatever happens to your unit does not affect the other units. This is very important because in co-ops, everything is shared. We'll get there in a second, but everything is shared. In condos, it says lease allowed. What does that mean? It means that you can rent your unit to a tenant, to somebody else. Okay? In co-ops, you might not be able to. In condos, You have an HOA, homeowners association, and you pay the common area monthly fees, or maintenance fees, the CAM fees. So there's common areas or common elements that we all share in a condominium. Still in condos, we have something called CC and R, which is just blanked. Covenants, conditions, and restrictions. So this is where the homeowner association limits you through the bylaws of the homeowner association. They limit what you can and cannot do with your property. Okay, so with the outside of your property, the inside is yours. You can probably do whatever you want. Outside, you might not be able to change the landscaping. You might not be able to park whatever kind of car you want. There might be a limitation on that. You might not be able to paint the front of your house or your unit, or even the doors, the outside of the door. You might not be able to make changes to that because of these restrictions. Okay, and then again, you have ownership. In a co-op, we're going to go over all this in a little bit. In a co-op, what you receive instead of a deed, Celine, were you singing opera? What you receive instead of a deed is stock and a proprietary lease. So in a co-op, you are stock or shareholder of the company that owns the building. Okay? And you get a lease that allows you to occupy a unit. Okay? Whatever you paid for allows you to occupy a unit. You do not own the unit. The corporation does. You guys got it? You rent a unit and you have stock in the company that owns the building. So pretty much you are a glorified tenant, right? You're a tenant with benefits in the ownership of the building. Because the corporation owns the building and not you own, and you don't own your individual units, that means that taxes, mortgage, insurance, and liability, they are shared. Okay? If they are shared, that means that if your neighbor stops paying his or her mortgage, his or her maintenance fees, and if enough people stop paying, the whole building gets foreclosed. Not just your unit or your neighbor's unit, the whole building gets lost. So the shared liability means that even though some people are paying on time, those some people will suffer for all of those that are not paying. You guys understand? Yep. As I said, in condos, in a condo, you can lease your unit to somebody else because you're the owner. But as I've been saying, co-ops, you are a tenant. So leasing to somebody else would be called subleasing because you are a tenant, right? So the bylaws of the corporation might state no subleasing allowed without approval of the board of directors, who acts as a landlord. Board of directors, they act as a landlord. Okay? Board of directors, they act as a landlord. If you're wondering what kind of handwriting this is, it got better over time, okay? Used to be way worse. Elda is saying, my camera is refusing to turn on. Did you pay the bill? Just put a quarter. Put a quarter. The camera will work. Don't worry about it. We'll figure it out later. Now, in condos, we had CAM fees. We had an HOA and CAM fees, right? Homeowners Association. And we had the Homeowner Association or HOA fees, which are for the common areas, for maintenance, insurance of the common areas, right? In co-op, we have monthly maintenance fees to pay for taxes, mortgage, insurance, and CAMs, because these are all shared by all the units, right? So it's divided by all the units. The company pays for all these and then divides that through all the units, okay? And they have their own bylaws as well, because they are the landlord, so they tell you what you can and cannot do with your units. But wait, it's not your unit, so they just tell you what you can and cannot do. Simple. You are a tenant shareholder. You are still a tenant that happens to own shares in the corporation that owns the building. Any questions on this? Let me know. I told you I need you guys to be full of energy this morning. No questions? All right. I'm either doing a good job or you guys are really good at understanding everything, so we're good. Either way, we're good. So right here, we're just going to go over a couple of things real quick because I already addressed everything. And one of the things is for you to understand what you own. You own from the wall in. From the wall, from the paint out, right? From the paint out, you do not own anything. So pretty much when you own a condo or occupy a co-op, right? A unit in a co-op, what you have is a box of air. Because from the paint inwards, from the paint inward is yours. You can do whatever you want, right? From the paint outward, it belongs to all the homeowners as tenants in common, okay? So here you go. What do you own? Airspace. Yep, airspace. No moon, just airspace. No clouds, just airspace. And then we share a driveway, the parking, the garage, the pool. Everything is shared amongst all the homeowners. Okay? I already explained this as well in that table that I showed you guys. You have exclusive interest and you hold of your individual apartments. That means if the other ones foreclose, it doesn't affect you. Again, exclusively possess, but share common elements. So everything that's right here, we covered. My garage, I don't share with anyone. I don't know what your question is. So here, the garage, guys. You have shared parking, and we have shared garage space underneath the building. Some parking spaces might be appointed to the unit itself, right? But it's not owned by the unit. You have the right to park there, but it's not owned by the unit. What you own in a condo is that. Everything else is shared with appointed parking spaces, maybe. It's not owned by you. Okay? Where we covered all this. Co-ops. Under co-ops, like I said, guys, you own shares and a proprietary lease. Very, very important, because this is the distinction of what is a condo and what is a co-op. Condo, you get a deed and you own your unit. You can do whatever you want with it, within the limitations, right? With co-ops, you own shares and you lease your unit. Okay, so you don't have full rights to it. All right? Cover that. Here's the co-op example. If there's 9 units, I have a stock certificate for 1/9 of all. Okay? So I'm leasing this unit right here is 1/9 of all. That's the stock certificate. That's what I own, not a deed. Okay? and then we still share the driveway, the parking, the garage, the pool. Exactly like a condo, right? The difference is we do not own the unit, we lease the unit, and we have stock in the corporation. Okay, this is another example. Stayed here. I don't know why. This is just repeating everything. Again, we already got this covered. It's highlighted in green in your book. What is the benefit of owning a co-op? And here we go. I had this example here already waiting for you. What is the benefit of having a co-op? So usually what I like to explain to people is a lot of realtors don't know how to explain the benefits of a condo co-op or even a single family, because they portray it as, oh, it's too expensive. Well, co-ops are mainly in New York. You find in condos as well, and then you find them in some other areas of the United States as well. So I gave the example in Jersey City. When you compare condos to co-ops to a single family, you have to be within the same town or close to it and understand the market. I cannot compare a co-op in New York City to a condo in Jersey City, to a single family in Elizabeth. You cannot do that. So to explain what's the benefit of a co-op, all these four right here are 1,000 square feet with a pool, with maintenance, with a gym and everything. All the amenities, they're all the same. You're either renting, you're renting with a benefit in the corporation, you own it, limited to your unit, or you own it fully and you have to maintain the property. So what's the benefit of a co-op? Is the cheapest version of ownership without the responsibility or liability. That's it. That's the benefit. If you compare 1,000 square feet single family to 1,000 square feet condo to 1,000 square feet co-op to 1,000 square feet renting, right? This one is the most expensive, but gives you the biggest benefit, because if you want to sell, it's way easier to sell a single family than to sell a condo co-op or transfer your rental to somebody else. If you're renting, well, you know the answer. It's not yours, you don't have liability, but you're paying somebody else's mortgage. It's cheaper than owning, not in the long run, but in the short run, it's cheaper than owning. In the long run, any of these three is way better. So if you're going to think about which one is cheapest, co-op is cheaper than condo and cheaper than single family, comparing the same conditions within the same town. Okay, very important. So again, what's the benefit of owning a co-op? If the building goes up in value, right, so does your stock, right? Somebody else maintains it and you are a tenant. So it's the cheapest form of ownership in this case. That's it. Nina's asking, what if you move? Can you still own the stock? So when you move, you're selling your stock. Because who can occupy the unit? As I said before, you might not be able to rent to anybody else. So you have an unlimited, no stated term lease to the units. When you leave the unit, you have to sell your interest. Unless the co-op bylaws allow you to rent it to somebody else. Okay? Lee is asking, don't co-ops need to vote and fund their own improvements like gardens and stuff? Great question. That's the difference between condos and co-ops. In a condo, the homeowners association votes for these changes or maintenance or whatever. In a co-op, there's a board of directors that decides everything for you. And then there's voting shares and there's elective shares, where some is allow you to make decisions, and the other one, if it's a major renovation of the building or selling the building, all the shareholders have to be involved. Okay, so that's the issue with corps. If it's part of it, board of directors decides. If it's all of it, then all the shareholders that hold interest in the company and therefore the property of the company, they must decide what to do. So like a general assembly. What about timeshares? Timeshares could be condos, it could be co-ops. It depends. It's just a structure. We might get there. All right, I already explained this. If people start failing to pay their monthly assessments, the entire property gets foreclosed in a co-op. Shareholders elect the board of directors, so all of us decide who's going to run the show, and then they're there for 2 years or they're there for 3 years, whatever the bylaws say. If the bylaws say whoever is the elected board of directors stay there for 4, 5 years, 10 years, then we only meet again for the purpose of choosing somebody else to run the show, right? Whatever that is. If it's 10 years, then it's 10 years from now. But they decide what to do with the property. So they're responsible for maintaining and operating the co-op. Okay? Again, unless it's a major renovation that's going to affect everybody. Celine, you were asking about time scams. There you go. What do you want to know about time scams? Tell me. Felix has a question. Okay, great. Waiting for those questions through. All right, Celine just wanted to know how they would be listed, but you answered. And yes, they are scams. They're not. I call it time scams because a lot of people cannot afford the timeshare. It's just that the sales tactics are very scammy, right? They're very aggressive when they're selling you a timeshare. Timeshares are great for the people that can, one, afford it, and two, take advantage of it. Simple. But they're great. They have great benefits. My business partner is always traveling because of that. Timeshares, right? So he can. Most people, I'll tell you right now, most people cannot. They don't have that ability. So he's taking advantage of what he purchased. And again, that's the problem with the sales. They're very unethical, very aggressive, and then when you figure out what happened, you're already $20,000 in the hole to a property that you'll never go. That's a problem. All right, so Felix is asking, so for co-ops, the shareholders can elect the board of directors but can't influence their decisions. So we elect the board of directors to make decisions for us. So think about, remember when we talk about general partnerships, I said there's a general partner and there's limited partners, right? The general partner is like the board of directors, runs the show, runs and operates the business. Now, obviously, this comes with limitations. Like I was saying before, if it's something that goes beyond the scope of what the board of directors is allowed to do, then they need a general assembly. General assembly is where we notify all the homeowners or all the if it's a homeowners association, or we notify all the shareholders, hey, there's a major issue that needs to be resolved that goes beyond our authority as board of directors or as trustees of the HOA, and we need to have your opinion or your vote. So yeah, even though they are appointed to run it, they have limitations of what they can and cannot do without the shareholders' immediate consent. You understand? So it's not like they can sell everything without notifying. It's not like they can restructure the whole building without notifying. No, they're limited to that. Okay. Olga says, I have one and I'm paying, timeshare. I have one and I'm paying too much money in maintenance and taxes. I would sell it, but nobody wants it. Now it's so cheap, travel and hotels. Now I think it's not good. All right, so that's the problem. I'll tell you what, condos, co-ops, and time scams. They're the easiest thing to get into, but the hardest thing to get out of. Try to sell a co-op interest. Try to sell your condo. Like I said, in terms of benefits, the single family was the best option, or a multifamily, but that you own separate from a condo. Those are the best options, all right? Because these are very easy to buy, especially the way they present it to you. Very hard to sell. But Olga, let me know what you got. Maybe I have somebody that wants it. You never know. So share with me in the WhatsApp later your info, what you have, what you want for it, and we'll go from there. Nina, trustees and or board directors are voted from current tenants. So trustees are for the HOA. So it's the HOA trustees. That's in condos. So the current homeowners vote in who the trustees are. So who's going to manage the homeowners association. In a co-op, because it's a corporation, the board of directors is determined by the shareholders, all of them. Okay? Not by tenants. You are a shareholder, which happen to be a tenant as well. But it's not the tenants, it's one and the same. But I just want to clear it out. It's the stockholders or shareholders that decide who's appointed to be a director. Okay? Good? So when we're talking about timeshares, guys, what is a timeshare? Timeshare is there's 52 weeks in the year. We purchase a building, a resort community, whatever, and you have the right to come to that community once a year on a particular week. Or you can purchase 2 weeks, or you can purchase 4 weeks, whatever you want. But technically, usually you're purchasing in blocks of 1 week. The problem is, like Olga was saying, you have to pay year-round maintenance and taxes for that 1 week of usage, that particular unit. So again, for most people, it might not make sense at all. But that's what a timeshare is. Okay. And guys, we are done with this chapter. We are done with this chapter, so I'm going to give you guys a quick break. Now 12 o'clock, well, 11:59. And we're going to come back to this to do chapter 5 at 12:10. So you got 10 minutes and a half to go take your break, grab something, coffee, whatever, and come right back full of energy for this one, which is also something you need to pay attention to. All right, guys? I'll see you in a bit.